I never thought I'd be the guy writing some long, messy story about my marriage falling apart, but here we are. My name's Mark, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 15 years. We've got a 16-year-old son named Ethan, and honestly, life seemed pretty good until the last few months. We had our ups and downs, typical married stuff, but nothing really prepared me for what I uncovered. At first, I started noticing little things. Lisa's phone started ringing more often, always silent when I walked into the room. She'd get defensive when I asked who was calling, saying it was just her sister or some work thing. She'd also be unusually tense about Ethan's schoolwork, always hovering around him when he was studying in the new study room we built for him. I thought maybe it was just her being a typical overbearing mom, but deep down, I sensed something was off. Then came the night I came home early from a business trip. I had a gut feeling I should check Ethan's phone, just to be sure he was staying out of trouble, and that's when I saw it. A video. It was recorded secretly, and I accidentally stumbled across it in his camera roll. The clip was short but clear enough. My wife Lisa was in the study room, our special little space meant for Ethan's homework, doing things I won't describe here but which made my stomach turn. She was clearly with someone, and from the voice I could tell it was the math tutor we'd hired for Ethan, a guy named Ryan. It was so shocking I couldn't breathe. Ethan had set the phone to record because he said he didn't trust his mother anymore. Said she'd been acting weird, sneaking off with Ryan, and she'd been lying about where she was when Ethan thought she was working late. I sat there staring at that video for what felt like forever, trying to process what I was seeing. My wife, who always acted so bitchy and self-absorbed, was cheating on me with some younger guy. I couldn't believe it. It was like my whole world just flipped upside down. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do. I felt numb but also furious. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray Ethan, our son? Tutor, no less. I had so many questions, but mostly I felt betrayed, hurt, and disgusted. And what made it worse was knowing this wasn't just a fling. This was serious enough for Ethan to record it. She was sneaking around, hiding it from me, from everyone. I kept replaying the video in my head, and all I wanted was to get her to own up to it, to face the truth. But I knew Lisa. She was the kind of woman who could lie her way out of anything, spin stories like a pro. I had no idea how I was going to get her to admit what she'd been doing. That night, I didn't sleep. I could feel the anger bubbling up, but also a strange mix of sadness and disappointment. Honestly, I just kept thinking about Ethan, my kid, who caught her in the act and had the courage to record it because he didn't trust her anymore. That was the moment I realized my wife's betrayal wasn't just cheating on me. It was hurting our whole family. I needed to decide what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing. This wasn't going to end well. Unless I took control of the situation, I wasn't going to let her get away with it, no matter how much she lied or how bitchy she acted when I finally confronted her. By morning, I had a plan forming and I was ready to face her, but I still didn't know how she'd react when I did. That's when I realized this was only the beginning. I woke up feeling a mix of rage and confusion. I knew I couldn't just sit on this information and pretend everything was normal. I had to confront Lisa, no more hiding. The thing was, I wasn't even sure how I was going to start that conversation. She was already the type to lie and spin stories, but I had that video, and I knew Ethan's little secret was the proof. I also knew that if I didn't act carefully, she'd just deny everything and turn it around on me. I decided to wait until she came downstairs for breakfast. The house was eerily quiet that morning, like everyone was walking on eggshells. Lisa was acting her typical bitchy self, snapping at Ethan when he was just trying to get his cereal, and giving me those fake little smiles. I knew she was trying to act innocent, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I had seen too much. Finally, when she sat down at the table, I looked right at her. Calm but firm, I said, "Lisa, I need to talk to you about something serious." Her face immediately stiffened and she looked at me like I was crazy. She always had that defensive attitude, like she was better than everyone else. She rolled her eyes and said, "What now, Mark? Can't you see I'm eating? Just say what you need to say." I took a deep breath. "I saw the video, Lisa. Ethan's phone caught you with Ryan, our son's tutor, in the study room. Do you want to tell me what the hell is going on?" Her eyes widened for a brief second, then she scoffed and leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Oh, so now I'm a liar, that's just great. Ethan is probably making that up. Kids do that all the time these days, you know, maybe he's jealous or something. I shook my head. No, Lisa. Ethan wouldn't record that unless he was desperate. He's been acting strange lately because he's been worried about you sneaking around with Ryan. And I saw the video myself, don't try to deny it. She huffed and looked away, trying to pretend she didn't hear me. Look, Mark, I don't know what you're trying to make me out to be, but I swear I was just talking to Ryan about Ethan's homework. It's nothing inappropriate. Inappropriate. I cut her off. You think I don't see what's going on? You've been hiding things, sneaking around, lying to my face. Ethan caught you, Lisa, so tell me the truth. Are you cheating on me? She looked furious now, her cheeks flushing. You think I'd cheat on you, please? Ryan's just helping Ethan with math, that's it. You're overreacting as usual. You're always so quick to jump to conclusions, Mark. Maybe you should get some help yourself. I couldn't believe the bullshit that was coming out of her mouth. I felt my blood boil, but I kept my voice steady. Don't lie to me, Lisa. I saw the video. Ethan recorded it because he's scared of what you're doing. You're cheating on me, and I want to know why. She scoffed again, fake tears welling up in her eyes. You're crazy. Ethan's just a kid. Maybe he's misunderstood. Maybe he's got a crush on Ryan, who knows. Maybe I'm just trying to help Ethan do well in school. You're always so paranoid, Mark. You think the worst of me, but I'm telling you nothing is going on. I stared at her, feeling a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. The woman I married, who I thought I knew, was trying to gaslight me. I saw her real face that morning. That bitchy, manipulative woman who would do anything to protect her lies. I knew then I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with my marriage, not with my family. The rest of that morning I felt like I was walking through a fog. She kept up her act, acting innocent and trying to turn everything around. I didn't say much, just listened as she spun her stories, pretending she was the victim. But I knew better. I'd seen her true colors, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. The anger was still bubbling inside me, but beneath it all was a deep sadness, because I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I was faced with the brutal reality that the woman I'd trusted for so many years was capable of betrayal, deceit, and outright lying. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I kept replaying the video over and over, wondering how everything had gone so wrong, how the woman I married could do something so shitty and then lie about it like I was some fool. I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. Whatever happened next, my world was about to change forever. That day, I felt like I was walking around with a weight on my shoulders that I couldn't shake off. Every time I looked at Lisa, I saw that fake smile, that practiced shrug, and it made my stomach churn. I couldn't believe how she was acting, like nothing had changed, like she wasn't caught red-handed. But I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to pretend it was okay. The worst part, Ethan was in the other room, probably confused and scared. I knew I had to talk to him, to find out what he saw and how he felt. I didn't want to scare him, but I also could just ignore what he'd recorded. That video was the proof I needed, the thing that finally shattered whatever illusion I had about my marriage. I waited until Ethan was done with his homework and then called him into the living room. He looked hesitant, like he sensed something was wrong. I sat him down on the couch and tried to sound calm. Ethan, buddy, I saw the video you took. Can you tell me what happened? His face was a mix of worry and confusion. Dad, I saw Mom with Ryan. They were in the study room. I was hiding behind the door and I recorded it because I didn't think anyone would believe me. I just wanted you to know what she's been doing. My heart sank. That kid was brave, and honestly, I was proud of him for having the guts to record that. But it also made me even angrier. She was lying to me, sneaking around with Ryan, who I now saw as a total dirtbag for betraying not just me but also Ethan's trust. I gently ruffled Ethan's hair. Thanks for telling me. I know this isn't easy, but you did the right thing. I promise I'll handle this. I looked him in the eyes, trying to reassure him, even though I was feeling a storm of rage inside. How could she do this? How could she betray her own family like this? That afternoon, I started planning what came next. I remember sitting in my office, staring at the screen where I kept the video and all the evidence I'd amassed. I knew confronting Lisa again might not do any good. She'd just deny everything. No, I needed a more calculated approach. I had to decide whether I wanted to fight for the marriage or cut my losses and walk away. Part of me still loved Lisa. How could I not? We had a history, a life together. But another part knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I had proof she was cheating, lying, and manipulating Ethan. I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. It was like I'd been living in some twisted nightmare, and I was only just waking up. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started researching divorce papers, thinking about lawyer consultations, and making a mental list of everything I'd need to do if I decided to end things. I was still trying to process whether I could forgive her or if I should just cut her loose. Honestly, the idea of staying felt like a betrayal of myself. How could I look at her in the eye after knowing she'd been unfaithful and lying? The thought of her trying to spin her way out of this made me sick, but I also knew this wasn't a decision to be made lightly. I needed to gather more evidence, more facts, and think about Ethan's future. If this affair was as bad as I suspected, and I knew it was, then I had to protect my son first. And myself, of course. I couldn't keep living in a lie. That night I sat alone in the dark, replaying everything I'd learned. The betrayal, the lies, the way she'd act innocent when caught, everything. I felt a strange mix of heartbreak and resolve. I knew I was about to make some hard choices. Whatever happened next, I was determined not to let her ruin my life or Ethan. I'd face whatever came, even if that meant fighting to get out of this mess and rebuild from scratch. The worst part, I had no idea how she'd react once I finally laid my cards on the table. Was she going to deny everything and pretend it was all a big mistake? Or would she try to manipulate me into forgiving her? Either way, I knew that the game was on, and I was ready to play it to the end. The next morning, I woke up with a plan already forming in my mind. I knew I couldn't just confront her head-on and expect her to come clean. Lisa was the type who'd lie her way out of anything, so I had to be strategic. I didn't want to ruin everything with a shouting match or some impulsive accusations. I needed proof, solid evidence, and a way to make her realize I wasn't backing down. I decided I'd follow her that day. Not in an obsessive, stalkerish way, but enough to see where she went and who she was with. I grabbed my phone, slipped out early, and kept a safe distance behind her as she left the house. She acted normal enough, grabbed her purse, kissed Ethan goodbye, and headed out. I followed her to a coffee shop downtown where I saw her meet Ryan. I watched from a distance as they exchanged quick glances, her leaning in just a little too close, her hand brushing his arm like they had some secret language. That confirmed what I already knew, that she was actively sneaking around. I felt my blood boil. Seeing her with Ryan in person made everything so much worse. I'd seen the video, but now I saw her in her element, lying, cheating, and clearly going out of her way to hide it. I got close enough to hear snippets of their conversation outside the coffee shop. She was laughing too loudly, trying to cover her tracks, talking about how she needed to get rid of the guilt, and how Ryan made her feel alive again. I clenched my fists. That bitch. She was bragging about their affair like it was some exciting secret, while I was home worrying about Ethan and trying to hold the pieces of my life together. I knew I had to act fast. I pulled out my phone and snapped enough pictures and videos to make her realize I wasn't bluffing. I'd already seen her lie, but this, seeing her in the act, was what I needed to finally push her into a corner. I couldn't just sit here and let her keep lying, nor could I keep pretending I didn't know what was going on. I carefully backed away and headed home, feeling like I'd just been hit by a truck. I went straight to my office, downloaded all my evidence, and started planning my next move. I knew I'd confront her face to face, but I also wanted to be prepared. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. This wasn't some petty fight. This was the end of the trust I'd once had in her. That afternoon, I sat her down, this time with my phone on the table, ready to play the videos and show her I meant business. She came home looking smug, like she thought she'd get away with it again. I could tell she was trying to act normal, but I wasn't buying her act anymore. I looked right at her and said, "Lisa, I've got more than just the video now. I followed you today. I saw you meeting Ryan. I saw how you're lying, sneaking around, hiding your affair. I've got pictures and recordings. So tell me, how long has this been going on? How deep does this betrayal go?" She froze, her face draining of color. For a moment she just stared at me, then she scoffed and tried her usual bullshit. "Mark, you're crazy, you're stalking me, you're paranoid. I swear I don't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to ruin everything because you're insecure." I shook my head slowly. "No, Lisa, I'm not paranoid. I've caught you red-handed. You can keep lying, but it doesn't change the facts. Ethan saw you and I have proof. You thought you could cheat, lie, and manipulate your way out of this, just like always, but not anymore." Her face twisted into anger and she said, "You're just jealous, you're insecure, maybe you should get some help. Ryan's just a friend helping Ethan with his homework. You're making up stories like you always do." I looked her dead in the eyes. "Stop lying, Lisa. I'm done playing your game. You're caught and I want the truth. How long has this been going on? Is Ryan just a friend or is there more?" She looked like she'd explode, then suddenly broke into tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage. "You don't get to tell me what's going on. I do what I want. Ethan doesn't need to know everything. You're just a jealous, insecure loser who can't handle his wife having a life outside you." That last comment hit me with the force of a punch. I'd always known she was manipulative, but hearing her call me a loser after everything was a new level of insult. I realized I'd reached the end of my patience. I couldn't let her keep lying and gaslighting me. If I wanted any hope of saving myself, I had to confront her head-on and lay everything out. I couldn't keep living in this false reality, pretending she was innocent. I told her to pack her bags and leave. I told her that I was done, that I wouldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and betrayal. She yelled and screamed, threatened to destroy me, but I didn't care. I was done with her bullshit. I knew I'd need to take legal steps soon, and I also knew I had to protect Ethan from whatever fallout was coming. As she stormed out that evening, I sat alone in the living room staring at the evidence I'd collected. I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. Relief that I finally knew the truth, and despair because I knew everything was about to change, badly, painfully, and probably forever. I asked myself if I could forgive her, if I ever could trust her again, but deep down, I knew that trust was gone. She had betrayed everything I believed in, and now I had to start figuring out how to rebuild my life piece by piece. The days that followed were a blur. After she left, I felt hollow, like part of me had been ripped out. I kept going over everything in my head, her lies, the video, the meeting with Ryan, Ethan's recording. The truth hit me hard. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, had been cheating on me with our son's tutor, and she had been lying for months. That betrayal cut deep, more than I ever thought possible. I had to figure out what to do next, but honestly, I felt lost. I spent most of that day trying to keep it together for Ethan's sake. I didn't want him to see me fall apart, but inside I was a mess. Seeing her walk out that door, realizing I'd been blind, had shattered whatever hope I'd held onto that our marriage could somehow survive. I looked at Ethan, who was still shaken. Sitting him down, I gently explained that Mommy needed some time to think and that we'd be okay. I didn't want him to be afraid, but I knew he sensed how tense everything was. That moment was a wake-up call for me. If I was going to protect him and myself, I needed legal advice. I found a divorce lawyer the next morning and scheduled a consultation. I told her everything I knew, and she nodded grimly. "You have grounds for divorce, and given the evidence, she's unlikely to contest it if you push forward. We'll need to gather everything, but this looks pretty solid," she said. Hearing that made me feel both a little relief and a sinking dread. I'd never wanted everything to come to this, but it was clear I had no choice. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to spin her lies. She called repeatedly, sending messages, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that Ryan was just helping Ethan, that I was crazy and jealous. I blocked her number, enough of her manipulations. I realized that, at least for now, I had to be firm. I couldn't let her gaslight me anymore. I knew that if I didn't stand my ground, she'd keep spinning her stories and trying to convince everyone she was innocent. That night, I sat alone in the house, going through the evidence again. The videos, the pictures, Ethan's recordings, all of it. The pain was overwhelming, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. I had to protect Ethan from her chaos, from her lies, and from the fallout of her betrayal. The decision to divorce was clear, but the emotional toll was heavy. I wondered how I'd ever trust again, how I'd rebuild my life after all this damage. I also started thinking about what I'd say to Ethan when the time came. I didn't want to scare him, but I knew I had to be honest. I wanted him to understand that sometimes adults mess up, and sometimes they make huge mistakes. I told myself I'd do everything I could to keep his world stable, even if it meant losing the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. Deep down, I knew I wouldn't forget this betrayal anytime soon. It would stay with me, a scar that never really heals. But I also realized I had to move forward for myself and Ethan. I couldn't let her manipulations ruin us. I had to stay strong, even if I felt broken inside. I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to get through this, even if it meant starting over entirely. As I sat there, reflecting on everything, I felt a strange mix of sadness, anger, and a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe someday I'd find happiness again. Maybe I'd learn to trust again, even if it was hard. But for now, I just needed to survive, to lay the groundwork for a new chapter, one where I wouldn't be a victim of betrayal anymore. I was done being played, done being lied to. And I was ready to fight for a better future, for me and Ethan. Weeks went by like a blur of paperwork, emotional exhaustion, and trying to keep everything together for Ethan. I went through the legal process, gathering all the evidence and pushing forward with the divorce. Lisa's attempts to manipulate the situation only made me more resolute. She kept calling, trying to spin her lies, but I refused to listen anymore. I knew her game, and I was done falling for it. One day, I finally sat her down during one of her rare phone calls and told her that everything was over. That I was filing for divorce, and she could try to deny it all she wanted, but the truth was out. I told her I'd protect Ethan and that he'd never have to see her again if I could help it. Her reaction was a mix of anger, tears, and accusations. She called me names, claiming I was a jealous, insecure fool who couldn't handle her freedom. Honestly, I didn't care. I was past caring about her opinion. The court proceedings went smoothly enough. My lawyer presented the evidence clearly, and she didn't stand much of a chance to deny her betrayal. Ethan stayed with me during the process, and I made sure he understood that this wasn't because he did anything wrong, that it was about her choices, not his. I promised him that I would do everything I could to make sure he felt loved and safe, regardless of what happened between me and Lisa. During those tough days, I also learned a lot about myself. I realized I'd been too trusting, too willing to overlook the signs because I wanted my life to be simple. I learned that honesty and transparency are everything in a relationship, and betrayal can never be truly forgiven if it's too deep or too calculated. I also saw how much strength I still had in me, how I could face betrayal, heartbreak, and chaos and still come out the other side. In the end, the divorce was finalized and Lisa moved out of the house. Ethan and I started rebuilding. It wasn't easy, and I won't pretend I'm fully healed. But I learned that sometimes people you love can hurt you in ways you never expect, and you have to decide whether to cling to what's broken or to let go and move on. Looking back, I see everything differently now. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can cut deeper than I ever thought possible. But I also see the importance of standing up for myself, protecting my son, and never losing sight of who I am. I don't know if I'll ever fully forget what happened, but I do know that I won't let it define me. I'll rebuild my life piece by piece with a new understanding of what's truly important. If there's one thing I'd say to someone going through something similar, it's this: trust your instincts. When something feels off, don't ignore it. Gather your evidence, plan your next steps carefully, and don't be afraid to walk away if that's what you need. Love is built on honesty and respect. Without those, everything else is just a lie. And no matter how hard it gets, you're stronger than you think. You'll get through it.